Jiri kerumana menjila coba hati kieba menji. Go,
But preservation is more what I'm about than anything.
Do you think that that desire for preservation of the instrument and also of the stories, do you feel like that comes out of your family's experience with slavery?
Yeah, it does. You hit the nail on the head. When I was growing up, I think I was more fortunate than most.
For international listeners who may not know,
Right.
just maybe give them a sense within your family of when slavery ended for your family and when you moved away from the direct impact of slavery.
Okay, like I was saying, when I was fortunate as I was growing up. I got to spend a lot of time with my great-grandfather. And my great-grandfather lived to be more than 110 years old.
Wow.
His father, one of his closest relatives, was the last slave in our family. So we're not that far removed from slavery. People have to remember, they document 1865 as the end of slavery. But there were also laws that were put into place that continued to be an institutionalized form of slavery all the way up until the 50s. And you had sharecroppers. So slavery, even though historically we can say it ended in 1865, it continued. So much so that we even had to have civil rights legislation enacted and things like that, all the way up into the 60s. So when I think of slavery, I like to go back before, and I like to remember that the men, women, and children who came here didn't come here as slaves. They had to be made to submit to slavery. And even then, there were so many slave rebellions and there were so many uprisings that you can't say that slavery was highly successful. You can't really say that, because human beings will always refuse. So I go back millennia in history when I think about our experience. I'm not trapped by the 250 some odd years, 46 years or so.
Well, the Amnesty International currently estimates that there are 2 million slaves on the planet.
Well, even today, it continues. You can't tell me that a sweatshop is not a place of slaves, or where you have people working for pennies a day, that's not slavery. It's bondage, it's servitude, it's slavery.
Well, in going into Africa, in traveling to Africa, what countries have you been to? Where have you been? It's mostly in West Africa.
Yeah, West Africa, because that's predominantly where most ancestors of North American, African Americans come from. Our ancestors are from the regions of today that you would call Senegal, Guinea, Mali, Gambia, Casamance region, all the way down to Ghana, Sierra Leone, all that whole West African region. My base of operation is primarily I have a home in Gambia, and I have a mentor there named Papa, who I go there and I'm able to study and stay. That's my base. From my base in Gambia, I usually travel to Mali, Guinea, Senegal, and the Casamance region. That's the area of the Kora, because when years ago I was told, I had a mentor named Buba, who told me that if I were going to be effective here in this country, then I would need to travel wherever the kora was mastered and played, if I were ever going to master it. And I pretty much traveled to all the areas where the kora is played. That's been my focus.
What do you mean by effective?
You know, when I first started playing kora, I was mixed in trying to play as good as the Africans from the continent were playing, trying to learn the language and speak as good and sing as good. And I remember I was in Senegal, Chadoué, Senegal, place and I was sitting, and I never will forget this, it was 2 in the morning, and I was sitting with my mentor, Buba, and he was playing and he was teaching me some things on the kora, and he looked at me and he said, "Your job is different." He said, "You're trying to play like me, you're trying to tell history like me, you're trying to sing like me, but we don't have the same experience." He said, you can begin learning here, but your job is different. And that's when I began to realize I was born here for a reason. And my stories need to impact the mind of the people here. So I celebrate my heritage, but I don't limit myself to telling only those stories that initially I remember I would only tell African stories. Stories are universal. We just put different clothing on them.
Music is universal too.
Music is universal too, yeah.
So with music and storytelling together, that's a real advantage. And then being able to speak 3 languages, you know.
Yeah, I'm lucky, huh?
I don't know if there's anything to do with luck.
I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate. A lot of people, they will say, "Oh, you're really lucky," but they don't know how much I suffered to learn to speak 3 languages. It wasn't